The neon sign of Murphy's Diner buzzed intermittently in the Portland rain, casting pink and blue shadows across the wet pavement. Marcus Chen pushed through the heavy glass door at 2:47 a.m., his camera bag slung over his shoulder in exhaustion. Weighing down his steps, he'd spent the evening photographing a late-night gallery opening, capturing the hollow smiles of artists and pretentious collectors until his eyes burned from the flash. The diner was nearly empty except for a trucker, nursing black coffee, and a woman sitting alone in the corner booth. She had auburn hair that caught the fluorescent light and skin so pale it seemed to glow. Marcus chose a booth 3 tables away, close enough to the window to watch the rain streak down the glass. "Coffee, hun?" The waitress appeared with a tired smile and a pot of what smelled like burnt hope. "Please. And maybe some pie if you have any." As the waitress poured, Marcus noticed the woman in the corner watching him. Not staring exactly, but observing with the kind of intensity he usually reserved for his photography subjects. When their eyes met, she didn't look away. She was beautiful in an unsettling way, sharp cheekbones, full lips, and eyes that seemed too dark for her face. But what struck Marcus most was how still she sat, like a predator conserving energy. "You're a photographer," she said suddenly, her voice carrying across the empty diner. Marcus looked up from his coffee. "How did you know?" She smiled, revealing teeth that seemed too white. "I can sense things about people. You capture moments, don't you? Freeze emotions in time." There was something in her tone that made Marcus's skin prickle. "I suppose that's one way to put it. May I join you? I'm Celeste." She was already standing, moving with fluid grace toward his table. Marcus nodded before he could think about it. Up close, he could see she was even more striking and even more unsettling. Her skin had an almost translucent quality, and he could see the faint blue lines of veins at her temples. "You have interesting energy," she said, sliding into the booth across from him. "Very rich. Emotional depth is rare these days." "I'm sorry, what?" Marcus set down his coffee cup harder than necessary. Celeste leaned forward slightly. "You feel things deeply? Joy, sorrow, passion it radiates from. You like heat. Those people are just empty shells going through the motions. But you." She paused, studying his face. "You actually live." Marcus felt uncomfortable under her scrutiny. "That's a pretty bold assumption based on seeing me for 5 minutes. "I don't need 5 minutes," Celeste replied. "I can taste emotions. And yours are particularly appetizing." The word hung in the air between them like a threat. Celeste's apartment occupied the top floor of a converted warehouse in the Pearl District. As Marcus climbed the industrial stairs, he wondered what had possessed him to accept her invitation. Something about her pulled at him, a magnetism he couldn't explain or resist. The space was a contradiction. Stark concrete walls softened by draped fabrics in deep purples and midnight blues. Canvases lined the walls, all depicting figures surrounded by swirling, luminous auras. The paintings seemed to move in the flickering candlelight, faces shifting between ecstasy and exhaustion. "My work," Celeste said, noticing his attention. "I paint what I see, the energy that flows between people." Marcus studied one canvas more closely. The central figure, a woman who looked remarkably like Celeste, had her hands pressed against a man's chest. Golden light streamed from him into her, while his face contorted in what could have been pleasure or pain. "This is going to sound insane," Celeste said, settling onto a low couch covered in velvet. "But I need to feed on human emotions to survive."
Marcus
Turned from the painting. Feed emotional energy. It's like, imagine if you could only survive by absorbing sunlight, but instead of the sun, you need the intensity of human feeling. She wrapped her arms around herself. "Without it, I'd become weaker. Eventually, I'd fade away entirely. That's impossible." Celeste stood and approached him slowly. "Is it? You felt something at the diner, didn't you? When I spoke about tasting your emotions." Marcus had felt something, a strange tingling sensation like static electricity building before a storm. "Maybe. Physical contact intensifies it." She stopped just inches from him. "With your permission, I'd like to show you." Every rational thought screamed at Marcus to leave. Instead, he found himself nodding. Celeste placed her palm against his chest, directly over his heart. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Warmth spread through his body, but it felt like something was being drawn out of him, not blood or breath, but something more essential. Colors seemed brighter, sounds more vivid, yet he felt increasingly lightheaded. Celeste's transformation was dramatic. Her pale skin gained a healthy flush, her eyes brightened, and she seemed to solidify before his eyes. She looked fully alive for the first time since he'd met her. "Amazing," she whispered, her voice stronger now. "You're emotional. Spectrum is incredible. I can taste your curiosity, your fear, even your attraction." Marcus swayed slightly. "I feel... strange." Celeste immediately pulled her hand away, concern replacing the euphoria in her expression. "I'm sorry, I took too much." "What did you take?" Marcus sat down heavily on the couch. "Life force, emotional. Energy, call it what you want. It's what keeps me functioning." She knelt beside him. "I've learned to control it, usually. But you're different. Your emotions are so intense, so pure." Marcus looked at her, seeing the guilt in her now bright eyes. "How long have you been like this? 3 years?" It started gradually chronic fatigue, doctors who couldn't find anything wrong. Then I discovered that being around emotionally intense people made me feel better. Physical contact amplified the effect. She stood and walked to the window. "I've learned to take just enough to survive without seriously harming anyone. Usually. Most people don't notice much. They might feel tired for a few hours. But people like you, with such rich emotional lives..." She turned back. "To him, the effect is stronger. On both ends." Marcus realized she was right. Despite feeling drained, there had been something intoxicating about the experience, a sense of connection deeper than anything he'd felt before. "I should go," he said, standing unsteadily. "Marcus, wait." Celeste reached toward him, then stopped herself. "I know this is overwhelming, but you're the first person who's ever understood, who's ever been able to truly help me feel alive." Marcus headed for the door. He felt her pull like gravity, making each step harder than the last. Dr. Helena Vasquez's office felt more like a living room than a clinical space. Books lined every wall, crystals caught afternoon sunlight on the windowsill, and the scent of lavender hung in the air. Marcus sat in a leather chair, still feeling drained 3 days after his encounter with Celeste. "You're not the first person to come to me with this type of experience," Dr. Vasquez said, her dark eyes kind but serious. "I've been studying what I call empathic vampirism for over a decade." Marcus leaned forward. "So it's real? What you told me about feeding on emotions? It's very real. And very dangerous, if not properly managed." Dr. Vasquez pulled a thick file from her desk. "I've documented 43 cases in the Pacific Northwest alone. The condition seems to be increasing, though I'm not sure why." She opened the file, revealing photographs and case studies. Marcus saw images of people who looked like Celeste, pale, ethereal, with that same too intense stare. The feeders, as I call them, develop this condition usually in their early 20s. It often follows trauma or severe emotional stress. Bodies begin requiring external emotional energy to maintain basic functions and the people they feed from. Dr. Vasquez's expression darkened. "The donors often become addicted to the feeding process. There's a neurochemical component. The brain releases endorphins during energy transfer. Many donors report feeling more alive, more connected than ever before." Marcus shifted uncomfortably, recognizing the description. "Can be devastating. Chronic fatigue, depression, and in extreme cases, complete emotional numbness. I've seen donors who lost the ability to feel joy, love, even basic contentment. How do you stop it? That's the challenge. Both parties become dependent. The feeder needs the energy to survive. The donor craves the intense connection. Breaking. The cycle requires enormous willpower from both sides." Dr. Vasquez stood and retrieved another file. "I want to show you something that might interest you. This is Owen Fletcher. He was a donor for nearly 2 years. The photograph showed a man, in his mid-30s, with prematurely gray hair and hollow eyes. He nearly died before breaking free. but now he runs a support group for others in similar situations. A support group for both feeders and donors? They meet twice a week in a community center downtown. Owen helps people understand they're not alone, that there are ways to manage this condition safely. Marcus stared at Owen's photograph. What happened to his feeder? That's the tragic part. Most feeders can't survive without emotional energy. When donors break away, the feeders. OFTEN. She paused. Let's just say the mortality rate among untreated feeders is significant. So Celeste could die if I stop seeing her? Dr. Vasquez closed the file, potentially. But continuing could destroy you both, feeding typically a scoot. Need more frequent contact, longer sessions? Eventually she might drain you completely without meaning to. Marcus felt trapped between saving himself and condemning Celeste. There is hope, Dr. Vasquez continued. I'm working with a small group of feeders on alternative energy sources. Meditation, emotional regulation techniques, even certain medications show promise. But it requires the feeder to want help. She handed Marcus a business card. Owens. Group meets Thursday nights. Strongly encourage you to attend. And Marcus? She fixed him with a stern look. Whatever you do, don't try to handle this alone. As Marcus left her office, his phone buzzed with a text from Celeste. I need 2. See you, please? The community center basement reeked of stale coffee and industrial disinfectant. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Marcus descended the stairs, following the sound of quiet voices. He paused at the doorway, seeing a circle of folding chairs. Occupied by about 15 people, Owen Fletcher looked older than his photograph, his gray hair thinning and lines etched deep around his eyes. But when he spoke, his voice carried the authority of someone who had survived hell. Tonight we have someone new joining us, Owen said, gesturing to Marcus. Remember, this is a safe space. No judgment, no shame. Marcus took an empty chair. Noting how the group seemed to naturally divide into 2 types, those who looked pale and ethereal like Celeste, and others who appeared drained and hollow-eyed like himself. I'm Jasmine, said a woman with silver hair and sharp cheekbones. I've been a feeder for 5 years, lost 3 donors before I learned control. Control? Marcus asked. Learning to take only what you need, she replied. Desperate. Gorging ourselves on emotional energy. We don't realize we're killing the people we care about. A man across the circle raised his hand. I'm Trevor, former donor. My feeder was my girlfriend, Nadia. We thought it was love this intense. Connection we had. Took me 18 months to realize she was literally feeding off my emotions. What happened to her? Marcus asked quietly. Trevor's face darkened. She couldn't accept limits, kept pushing for more contact, longer sessions. When I finally said, no, ... double quotes, he shrugged. She found someone else within a week. Owen leaned forward. The addiction works both ways. Feeders become dependent on the energy, but donors get hooked on feeling needed, on the intensity of the connection. It mimics love, but it's really just parasitism. A young woman near Marcus spoke up. I'm Brianna Feeder, but I've been clean for 8 months now, unauthorized feeding. How? Marcus asked. Group therapy, meditation, and microdosing from volunteers? She gestured to a few people wearing green badges. These are our regulated donors, people who give small amounts of energy in controlled settings. No romantic entanglements, strict time limits. Marcus noticed the green badge wearers looked healthier than the other donors. It works? It's not perfect, Owen said, but it's sustainable. The key is breaking the emotional dependency. Most feeder-donor relationships become codependent disasters. An older man with kind eyes spoke from the back. I'm Dr. Martinez Knott. Like Dr. Vasquez, I'm a researcher. We're studying the neurochemistry of energy transfer. Early results suggest meditation and certain antidepressants can reduce feeding needs by up to 60%. What about the donors who can't break away? Marcus asked. The room fell silent. Finally, Trevor answered. Some never do. They chase that high until it kills them literally. I know 3 people who died from emotional depletion. Their feeders just kept taking until there was nothing left. Owen stood and walked to a whiteboard covered in rules and phone numbers. This is why we have protocols. No feeding outside supervised sessions. No romantic relationships between feeders and regular donors. And absolutely no feeding during emotional crisis. That's when feeders lose control. As the meeting continued, Marcus learned about the hidden network of feeders throughout the city. Some, like Jasmine, had learned control. Others operated like predators, moving from donor to donor. There were even rumors of feeders who had learned to feed from groups, drawing small amounts from many people instead of draining individuals. The most dangerous ones, Owen said as the meeting ended, are the ones who believe they're in love. They convince themselves and their donors that the feeding is romantic intimacy. Those relationships almost always end in tragedy. As people filed out, Owen approached Marcus. "I can see you're still attached to your feeder. Word of advice: decide quickly whether you want to save her or save yourself. In my experience, you rarely get to do both." Marcus's phone buzzed again. 3. More texts from Celeste, each more desperate than the last. The abandoned warehouse squatted in southeast Portland like a concrete monument to decay. Marcus stood across the street, watching figures slip through a side door marked with a faded crescent moon symbol. His phone showed 17 missed calls from Celeste over the past 2 days. Inside, the space had been transformed into something between a nightclub and a feeding ground. Dim red lighting cast everything in shadow, while soft music masked the sounds of whispered conversations and gentle sighs. Marcus counted at least 30 people arranged in intimate pairs throughout the cavernous space. He found Celeste near the back, her hand pressed against a young man's forehead, while he sat with closed eyes and a blissful expression. She looked better than ever, radiant, almost glowing with absorbed energy. But when she saw Marcus, she immediately pulled away. "From her donor? You came," she breathed, rushing to him. "I was so worried when you stopped answering my calls." "What is this place?" Marcus asked, watching a woman nearby drain energy from 2 donors simultaneously. "A sanctuary. Others like me gathering safely." She took his hand, and he felt the familiar tingle. "Marcus, I've learned so much about what I am, what we could be together. We need to talk." He pulled his hand away, ignoring her wounded expression. They found a quiet corner where Marcus explained everything: his visits to Dr. Vasquez, the support group meetings, Owen's warnings about escalation and addiction. "You're wrong about us," Celeste said fiercely. "What we have isn't parasitism. It's symbiosis. You feel it too, don't you? That connection when we're together." Marcus couldn't deny it. Even now, standing close to her, he felt drawn like metal to a magnet. "But it's killing me, Celeste. I can barely function anymore." "Then stay here with me, permanently." Her eyes lit up with desperate hope. There are others who've made that choice. Full-time donors who live with their feeders. They're happy. Marcus fulfilled. Marcus looked around the warehouse and saw what she meant. In several alcoves, he spotted what were clearly permanent arrangements donors, who looked completely drained but wore expressions of eerily contented devotion. "Look at them," Celeste continued. "They've found their purpose, and I've found mine with you." Before Marcus could respond, Owen Fletcher emerged from the shadows. "Hello, Marcus. I wondered if you'd end up here." Celeste stepped protectively. In front of Marcus, "Who are you? Someone who's been where he is now?" Owen's weathered face showed no judgment, only sadness. "Celeste, isn't it? You're killing him. I'm saving him," she shot back, "giving his life meaning by turning him into a battery." Owen moved closer. "I can see the signs, the weight. Loss, the pallor, that vacant look in his eyes. How long before you drain him completely?" "That won't happen. I love him." "You love what he gives you. There's a difference." Dr. Vasquez appeared beside Owen, her expression grim. "Marcus, we've been looking for you. Dr. Martinez's latest research shows permanent donors rarely survive more than 18 months. Marcus felt the conversation spinning around him. But all he could focus on was Celeste's face, the fear and desperation there. The way she clutched his arm like a drowning person gripping a life preserver. "There's another way," Dr. Vasquez continued. "The group therapy program, regulated feeding with volunteers, medication to reduce your dependency. You could have a normal life, Celeste. Normal. Celeste laughed bitterly. You mean weak, fading half-life? You mean sustainable? Owen countered. I know it's scary, but you can survive without draining someone you claim to love. Looked at the permanent donors scattered throughout the warehouse. They're blissful. Empty expressions, their skeletal frames. Then he looked at Celeste, beautiful and vibrant from others' stolen vitality. I can't do this anymore, he said quietly. Celeste's face crumpled. Marcus, please. Without you, you'll learn to live differently, or you won't. His voice was steadier than he felt. But I won't be your life support system anymore. As Owen and Dr. Vasquez led him toward the exit, Marcus heard Celeste calling his name, then felt a sudden, violent pull as she tried to drain energy from him across the distance. He staggered, but kept walking. Outside in the rain, Marcus felt lighter than he had in weeks and utterly heartbroken. The withdrawal will be hard, Dr. Vasquez warned. Both the physical effects of energy depletion ending and the psychological addiction to being needed so intensely. Marcus nodded, already feeling the absence like a physical ache. Through the warehouse windows, he could see Celeste moving toward another potential donor. Will she survive? He asked. Hey. Owen put a hand on his shoulder. That's her choice to make. You've made yours. As they walked away through the Portland rain, Marcus wondered if saving himself meant becoming the kind of person who could abandon someone he loved. But deep down, he knew Owen was right. What he'd felt wasn't love. Was consumption disguised as connection. The real work of healing himself would begin tomorrow.